And from Manu, the word mankind is derived. Natha is a person who has become self-aware. Patanjali Yoga Sutra is like putting your hand into fire. Shri Shambho Ramanatha. So today we will talk about what yoga means to different people before we go into actual Yoga Darshanas. One of you will see even in your life, you must have used the word, it is good yoga, Valle yoga, Sai yoga, Upayoga, Abhi yoga. There are so many ways that yoga itself, the word yoga itself is used. And when it comes to spirituality, Vivekananda, and of course even in Bhagavad Gita, yoga is divided into 4. What we broadly call as margas, the paths to liberation. So where Krishna is talking about one marga or one yoga called Jnana yoga. All the darshanas fall into the Jnana yoga or the Jnana marga. I am not a big fan of calling these margas as yoga, but it has happened so that people have started calling it Jnana yoga. You might be aware of this, but I'll just cover this very quickly. Jnana marga is to find the path of liberation using Jnana, knowledge of wisdom. The second is Karma marga. Karma marga is the path, the yoga, Karma yoga is the path of using action for your liberation. Bhakti yoga is using devotion, surrender, prapatti towards liberation. And then Raja yoga. So what most people call as yoga is Raja yoga. And when we say Raja yoga, it usually means Patanjali's yoga. We will see, we will come to Patanjali. But there is a lot of water which has flown under the bridge before we reach Patanjali. You know? And to understand yoga, I am reminded of a Zen story. Because of the bridge under the water, the master puts the disciple's head into underwater and holds it there. And the bubble starts coming, block, 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 block. And slowly the bubbles start receding. Slowly the bubbles start becoming less and less and less. And it is almost coming to a standstill. And then the master lets go of the disciple's head and says, "Come back to me when you crave for truth like you craved for air." If you have that kind of craving, then you come into the path of Raja Yoga, into the path of yoga itself. But as already mentioned, when it comes to Jnana Marga, see today in this and the next session, I am not going to talk about the Anushasana, the discipline of yoga. We are going to discuss it at an intellectual level. That is why it's called Darshana, Yoga Darshana. In Bhagavad Gita, Bhagavan Sri Krishna says, Sankhya Yoga Pritak Bala Pravadantina Panditaha Ekam Api Asitaha Samyuka Ubhayor Vindante Palaha. So what it says is, Sankhya Yoga Pritak. Sankhya and Yoga are dyads. They cannot exist without each other. Like I said, all the 6 darshanas, the Astika darshanas, are dyads. They work as twins. So there is Sankhya and Yoga, there is Nyaya and Vaisheshika, and there is Purva Mimamsa and Uttara Mimamsa. So here in Bhagavad Gita, the 4th chapter of Bhagavad Gita, he says, only children think that Sankhya and Yoga are 2 different things. But the Pandita, the Yogi, he knows that they are 2 sides of the same coin. Can you have one coin? You will not be able to circulate the coin. If you have one side of a coin, then you cannot circulate the coin. Okay, it can be a collectible. So even when we are talking about darshanas, we are going to look at the dyad of Sankhya and Yoga. Now we have looked at Sankhya already. And we know Purusha and Prakriti get together to create or evolve everything. And we looked at the descent of consciousness into matter. Now we have to look at the ascent. All other darshanas, Jnana Marga or Jnana Yogas, start with the line Athato Jignasa. Jignasa of something. What is Jignasa? Jignasa means the thirst of knowledge. Correct? So in Sankhya we saw Dukkha Traya Abhigatat Jignasa. Because of three dukkhas, now the quest of knowledge has started. In Vaisheshika they say Atato Brahma Jignasa. In Vedanta, Brahma Sutra they say Atato Brahma Jignasa in Vedanta, Brahma Sutra. In Vaisheshika, Atato Dharma Jignasa. So it is all about the quest of knowledge, which is what Darshanas are all about. But in Patanjali's Yoga Sutra, he says, Atato Yoganushāsanam. He doesn't say Jignasa. He says Anushasanam, means the discipline. Now, let us start the discipline of yoga. We will go a little deeper in the next session. Today I wanted to discuss something which usually not many people speak. That yoga itself has evolved over the last, if you are very ambitious, 15,000 years. If you are very conservative, at least 5 to 6,000 years. How 5 to 6,000 years? Because we have found in, the Harappan seals in Mohenjo-daro, Harappa, we have seen Pashupati Natha being represented in a sitting position called Siddhasana. That asana is called Siddhasana, and he is sitting with a Chinna Mudra on his knees. So we know that yoga existed during the Sindhu Saraswati civilization, the Indus and Saraswati civilization. We know this much. And we know it is at least 5 to 6,000 years old. Maybe older. But I'm saying even with a very conservative estimate, 5 to 6,000 years back, yoga was being practiced, and it was so popular that it was minted on a coin, on a seal. Right? But let's take the traditional view first. What are the traditional views of yoga? Let me tell you, there are majorly about 4 different types of yoga. One yoga comes from the Veda Vedanta Darshana, which ends up in Patanjali. So I will discuss that first. It is said that who is the founder of yoga according to Veda? We find references of yoga even in Veda, which is much, much, much earlier compared to Patanjali. So, yogasya vakta Hiranyakarba. The person who brought yoga to the world is called Hiranyakarba. Now, who is Hiranyakarba? Hiranyakarba is a title that is given to Surya, is given to Mahat, is given to Mahayogis, is given to great Shiva Bhaktas. It is given to a lot of people. But here, I will not go into too much detail. We kind of accept that this is the Chaturmukha Brahma. You must learn to differentiate between Chaturmukha Brahma and Parah Brahma. When we say Brahman, Brahman is the Purusha. Atma, Brahman, Parabrahma, Paratattva. All this means Purusha of Sankhya. Chaturmukha Brahma is somebody who's descended, who's evolved from that Purusha and Prakriti mixture. He is not pure Purusha. So Chaturmukha Brahma is supposed to have propounded or brought about. It says Vakta. Vakta means the person who spoke. He is the Vakta of Yogasya. And then he taught it to his children, Sanaka, Sanadana, Sanandana, and Sanat Kumara. These are the 4 eternal sons of Brahma. They are prior to the Saptarishis also. Sanaka, Sanadana, Sanatana, Sanandana, Sanatana, Sanat Kumara. This we find in a lot of Vedanta, in Upanishads. And what Brahma taught is called Brahma Yoga or Karma Yoga. Karma Yoga later on comes into Bhagavad Gita in chapter 4, Jnana Karma Sannyasa Yoga, where Krishna says, I taught the Vivasvan Surya. Who taught it to Manu? And from Manu, the word mankind is derived. You know that. We call ourselves man because we are children of Manu. In Sanskrit, Manu became in scientific terms mankind, Manukula. So Vivasvan Surya, out of the 12 Surya, Vivasvan is one. He taught it to Manu. Manu taught it to Ikshvaku, who is the founder of Surya's dynasty, Surya dynasty, which is where Rama and Dasharatha and all these Raghu also comes, Dilipa also come. Ikshvaku teaches it to Rishis. This is found in Bhagavad Gita, where Krishna is telling Arjuna that this is how it has come from Surya to Manu, Manu to Ikshvaku, Ikshvaku to Rishis. Now I am teaching you the same yoga. So from Vedas to Upanishads to Bhagavad Gita. This is called Brahma Yoga or Karma Yoga. There is a second genesis or generator, giver of yoga, which even today we accept and follow. That is Shiva. In Shiva also there are many disciplines. I want you to understand this because otherwise it gets very confusing as to so many people say, I am yogi, I am siddha, I am natha. So what are all these? They all say, what do you do? They say, we practice yoga. Sometimes Patanjali, sometimes non-Patanjali. So Shiva started the Natha Parampara, like I said, Pashupati Natha himself is a Natha. Natha is a person who has become self-aware. I also belong to the Natha tradition. Okay? Then in the Natha tradition also, there are three different verticals. One vertical is the Navanatha tradition. One vertical is the Virashaiva or a Panchamasali tradition. One is the Shakti Pradhana tradition or the Shaktanatha tradition. The Navanathas have a unique style of yoga which is still practiced and which is very popular. They have three important texts of Hatha Yoga. The Natha Parampara is the is the genesis of Hatha Yoga. Hatha Yoga and Patanjali Yoga. In Hatha Yoga, there are three principal texts. One is called the Gheranda Samhita or the Goraksha Samhita, which was written by or spoken by, because it was recorded by his disciple, called Gheranda Samhita. Gheranda Samhita is Shadanga. Like you have Ashtanga Yoga in Patanjali. I will not go into too much detail. Maybe if you are interested, I will do another session exclusively on Hatha Yoga. Okay? The second important text is Hatha Yoga Pradipika. Again attributed to Gorakshanatha or this is also called Goraknath. That is Chaturanga, only four-limbed. In Gheranda, yoga is six-limbed. In Hatha Yoga Pradipika, it is only four-limbed. And there is one more text called Shiva Samhita. We don't know who has written it, but it also belongs to the Natha tradition. The Navanatha tradition, 9 Nathas, they are all considered to be reincarnations of Shiva. Let me tell you a very quick story. All the authority of Veda comes by what we call as Agama Shastras or the Shaiva Agamas. What is Agama? First we must understand what is Agama. Agama is when a higher power or a higher entity is teaching to a lower entity or a lower power. Like Shiva is a higher power and he is teaching Shakti, his consort. So his teachings are all in love language. So without Guru Shishya Parampara, you will not understand the Agamas. The Agamas have to be understood through a Guru Shishya Parampara. So when Shiva speaks to Parvati, Shakti, Devi, in the language of love, it is also called as the twilight language. Sandhya Bhasha. Sandhya Bhasha cannot be taught. It has to come through Guru Shishya Parampara. So these kind of texts are called Agama. There are other kind of texts like the Vedas, where the lower entities are praising the higher entities. Where you say, oh, you are great, oh my Lord, you have Sahasrabaho, Sahasrapada, you have 1,000 arms, I see you radiant. That these types of texts like the Vedas and the other poems and suktas and sutras, these are called Nigama Shastra. Agama Shastra and Nigama Shastra. Okay, Nigama means from lower to higher. Lower to higher, Nigama, higher to lower, Agama. So in Shaiva Agama, because it is Shiva talking to Parvati, and there are Vaishnava Agamas also, where Vishnu is talking to Lakshmi. All your temple-based religious worships are Agama Shastras. Okay? And most of the yoga are Agamas. So what happens? Shiva is, it's just a story, just imagine it. We don't have any proof, don't ask me, we don't know. But Shiva is talking to Shakti. What this actually means is, when you receive this transmission, you have to be like a lover to the Guru to receive the energy, the Shakti Patha. And just like a woman's womb, you have to be like a woman approaching the Guru and take that Shakti, put it in yourself. What does a woman do? She takes something from the man, puts it in her womb, manufactures something new which has its own life, which is like both the mother and father, but it is independent. So Agama Shastras have to be approached with a emotion of surrender. And one has to receive. That is why all temples have something called Garbha Griha or Garbha Gudi. Whose Garbha is it? It is your Garbha. You go there, you take the quality that is required. For example, if you go to Rama temple, let us say Rama you like Eka Patni Vrata or Rama you like Eka Vani. So he always speaks the truth. So you take that quality, put it in yourself, put it in your Garbha, and then something like Rama you will become. Because you give birth to yourself. These kind of people are called Dvija, twice born. Dvija means twice born. Okay? So, Shiva was sitting on top of Mount Kailas and whispering these secrets to Shakti. And at a distance was sitting Nandi, because he is always there. So he heard these Yoga Sutras. And there was a fish in the Manasarovar. It also heard all the Yoga Sutras. And it started asking doubts. So Parvati gave, a shapa. She gave a curse, saying, you go into the Manava Loka, go to the world of men. It's a good curse, so that yoga becomes available to us. So the followers of that fish who incarnated as a human, Matsyendranatha, who learnt it from Adinatha, which is Shiva himself. So Adinatha indirectly taught Matsyendranatha. Matsyendranatha his Shishya, his disciple is Gorakshanatha or Gorakhnath. And then 7 more Nathas come, and that has developed into the Navanatha Parampara. This is where Hatha Yoga comes from. Now Nandi was also there. Nandi also reincarnates from time to time. So his followers are called the Veerashaivas. One of the Veerashaivas are Lingaites. They also pick up this yoga from the Agama Shastras. And they have brought it down into their own languages. So you find Tamil, in Tamil, these Nathas are called Siddhas. Siddha Yoga is nothing but Natha Yoga. Called Nadar in Tamil. In Karnataka, they have become Lingayat Veerashaiva. In North India also, there are Jangamas. There are Sharans. So, many varieties came about. In Karnataka, there was a very famous sect called Kalamukha, which have disappeared now, who are also Nathas. There is Lakulisha Pashupata sect, which spanned from border of Karnataka to Afghanistan, also disappeared. So, many of these yogic traditions have disappeared. Then, who was to receive all this information, knowledge and wisdom? Shakti, isn't it? So there are Shaktanathas. I belong to that Shaktanatha tradition, where we approach Shiva through Shakti. So very quickly I'll tell you, what is this Hatha Yoga? Hatha means it comes from 2 words, Ha and Ta. Ha means the Surya Nadi, Ta means the Chandra Nadi. That is the male and the female energy which is inside of us. So we reach Shiva through Shakti. Okay. So here the tradition is slightly different from the Navanatha, but still it's yoga. Because how did you come about? You came about because the male energy in your dad and the female energy in your mother came together. So in you both male and female exist. In a woman also both male and female exist. So when those 2 energies come together, how do they come together? That yoga is the Hatha Yoga. Okay. And there is in Shiva, now we have Nathas, we have Siddhas, then we have the Sapta Rishis, who also learnt yoga from Dakshinamurti. Shiva as Dakshinamurti. You might have seen on the south wall of temples, you have Dakshinamurti. And how did Dakshinamurti teach? He taught in silence. Only Shaktipata. We do not have the fortune or the strength to teach silently. That is why I have to speak. Saptarishis were such great receivers, and of course Shiva as Dakshinamurti is such a great giver, teacher, that they got all the knowledge, information just through silence. And from the Saptarishis, all the Vedas, the Vedantas and everything has come. So that is another tradition of yoga. Then we have the Jainas. If you look at the names of the 23 Tirthankaras before Mahavira, you'll find names like Rishabhanatha, Ajitanatha, Shambhavanatha, Abhinandananatha, Sumatinatha, Suparshvanatha, Parshvanatha, Naminatha, Neminatha, Mallinatha. Mallinatha was a female Tirthankara. All these Nathas made their own group called the Jaina group. We will discuss Jaina darshan also as a philosophy, not the yoga. And then there are yogis. Now, yoga, let me tell you a very, very beautiful story as to what Patanjali's yoga and how Shiva and Vishnu both come together in this Patanjali yoga. Shiva comes, meets Vishnu in this story. The Vedanta meets with Agama Shastras. So Agama Nigama fusion is there, Shiva Vishnu fusion is there in Patanjali story. Okay. Before that, before I go into the story, I want to tell you, there's a place called Girnar in Gujarat. Girnar is a hill where the Nathas, the Navanathas, the Jaina Tirthankaras and Dattatreya all meet together. Dattatreya is also a very, very well-known yoga guru, and there is a Dattatreya yoga which is followed. Dattatreya yoga which is followed. So, Patanjali's story is very interesting. Some eons back, we don't have time. This is just a story that we find in Yoga Sutras, okay? Shiva was doing something called the Ajapa Tandava in his Nataraja form. You know, Nataraja is the dancing version of Shiva. And he is doing something called Ajapa Tandava, which is a combination of a lot of yoga exercises and meditation. Just by looking at his movements, one would get into a higher state of consciousness. Meditation would be imbibed on its own. So, Vishnu was looking, he was flabbergasted, he kept looking. Adishesha also kept looking. You know, Adishesha is the serpent on which Vishnu is sleeping. So suddenly, Vishnu realizes that there is a desire that has come into Adishesha. Adishesha felt, what if I can learn this technique from Shiva? It is said that the earth resides on top of the Adishesha's hood like a mustard seed. Sasive. Like a mustard seed. So the earth is supposed to be so tiny, sitting on the hood of Adishesha. So imagine the great Adishesha suddenly has a desire. Vishnu, of course, Antaryami, he is able to understand everybody's mind. He says, okay, go. And you learn from Nataraja. At the same time, there is one tribal woman called Gonika who is praying to Surya. I want a son, please give me a son. And she's kept her hands like this. It's called Anjali. Says, give me a son, give me a son. One tiny snake comes and falls into her hand. And she looks at the snake, it has the face of a human. So because the snake fell, falling from the heaven, it is called Patana. Patanjali, it fell into her hands. So she named the baby Patanjali. Okay, and that half snake, half man grows up to become the Patanjali Rishi, the Patanjali Maharishi that we see. So anytime you notice Nataraja, the statue of Nataraja, you will find that on one side, as an attendant, is Patanjali Rishi. On the other side, you will find Vyagrapada. Vyagra means tiger. He is also a great yogi whose feet are made up of tiger. So what is this? I will very quickly tell you why we have half human, half animal beings. See, in the Indian Darshanas, like I said, we have all evolved from consciousness to matter and we are going back into consciousness. And evolution itself, like Darwin says, started from water and it is grown into multicellular and reptile to mammal and all that. So we carry a lot of animal instincts. We carry a lot of animal power inside of us. In fact, there is an entire Shastra devoted to how to identify who is carrying what energy. So you will find in all ancient cultures around the world, they will have some sort of an animal totem or they will have a spirit animal. They will say, like for example, in Europe, like Romulus and Romulus, they were fed by wolves. They're called the children of wolves. In Karnataka, we have Hoysala, who's supposed to have, you have stories of Huli Hale Namevu, where you drink milk from tiger. So all these things are, in China you have year of dog, year of dragon. So you're born with those qualities. Where does this come from? This comes from the reincarnation theory that we are carrying. And there is an entire science devoted to it, saying what is the predominant energy that you are carrying. Like I was carrying the energy of a lion. So for somebody like me, worshipping or bowing down, surrendering to Narasimha had maximum benefit. So that energy, that extreme energy that was inside of me could come out. And you can use that energy to liberate yourself. All this yoga, whatever I am discussing, comes from Shiva's Shaivagama, and it is Hatha Yoga. Patanjali, I will tell you, now Patanjali has come as a boy, he's born, he grows up as Gonika's son. And you must understand the major, to understand Patanjali Yoga Sutra and how it is different from Shaivagama Yoga, you must understand the difference between Vaishnavism and Shaivism. They say Vishnu is Alankara Priya, Shiva is Abhisheka Priya. Vishnu is always reincarnating, he is action, he is karma oriented. He comes for protection of society, he comes for protection of order. It's all about social norms, society, people, family, all that. Shiva is always sitting alone in one cave, or he is sitting in the smashana, in the graveyard. He's got ash, he's got no ornaments, he's a Vairagi. He's alone. Even though he is with family, he's still alone, he's meditating. So there is a huge difference between the Vaishnava thinking and the Shaiva thinking. In Shaivagama, everything is about yourself, going internal, being alone. In Vaishnava, it is being with people, being in the society, doing your dharma, understanding your swadharma, and so forth. So, when Patanjali, who is nothing but the reincarnation of Adishesha, comes, of course he is carrying the social norms of the Vaishnava traditions along with it. So he cannot go into some cave. All of Patanjali's techniques are very, very mathematical, precise, step by step, logical. There is no mysticism in Patanjali Yoga Sutra. You don't have to believe. Patanjali Yoga Sutra is like putting your hand into fire. The effect is it will burn. You might say, no, I don't believe that fire will burn. Whether you believe or don't believe, fire will burn your hand. If you put your hand into fire, it will burn you. But in Shaivagamas, the other Shaivagamas, there is a certain amount of willful suspension of disbelief. Because you have to approach the Guru with complete surrender. You have to lose your logic. But here that is not required. In Yoga Sutra, that is not required. In fact, there are 3 contributions of Patanjali. The first one is called Patanjali Tantra, which is an Ayurvedic treatise on Charaka Samhita. He's written a Karika on Charaka Samhita. Now he is saying, I have done this because of Sharira Shuddhi. Your body should be clean, it should be pure. Only then you can do something in this life. Then he writes Yoga Sutras and says, this is for Chitta Shuddhi. Chitta. We will understand what chitta is in the next session in more detail, which is mind and internal workings of the mind. So he also writes another treatise called Mahabhashya, which is a karika on Panini's Ashtadhyayi. It's about grammar. Panini's Ashtadhyayi is it's the authority on Sanskrit grammar. There he says, after you have purified your body, after you have purified your mind, you must have Vak Shuddhi. Vak means speech. Because communication is the basis of all civilization, of all societies, of all combined living. See how beautiful. It says, first have pure body, then you have pure chitta, pure consciousness, and after that you integrate with other people who are also as pure as you. None of the Shaiva Agamas talk about coming together as a society. Okay, now you have Chitta Shuddhi, liberate yourself, finish. The coming back is something uniquely Vaishnava. Of course, later Buddhism, one more very big yoga school is the Buddhist yogas. Buddha, see, when we say yoga, please do not mistake, please do not misunderstand it as asana, exercise and all that. Next class I will explain in detail that yoga is far away from all this. Asana is a very small part of it. Primarily meditation and above. Buddhism also has two different schools, the Theravada and the Mahayana. And you probably heard of both of them. In both Theravada and Mahayana, there are different types of yogas. If you have heard of Zen, have you heard of Zen? Zen, which is practiced in China, in Japan, came from the Chen Buddhism, the Chen Yoga. The Chen Yoga came from Dhyana Yoga, which is the Mahayana school. So in India, it was called Dhyana Yoga, which became Chen Yoga in China, which became Zen in Japan. You heard of Vipassana, which is Vipassana, that is Theravada, that is a separate type of yoga which was taught by Buddha himself, which is not practiced in these countries. Theravada practices Vipassana or Vipassana. See, yoga itself, you must understand, like I said, has multiple meanings. In Bhagavad Gita, it says, Yoga karmasya kaushalam. There is a finesse of doing any kind of work, what we call a standard operating procedure. But it's not just standard operating procedure, it is the elegance of procedure. Karmasya kaushalam, kaushalya, the elegance. So every time you are doing a productive, wonderful, elegant work, the way it is supposed to be done, it is yoga. The word, see, a lot of places you will just have one definition, which is yujyate iti yoga, yujjir dhatu. Yujjir is the dhatu. Yujjir means to join. So from that dhatu we have the joining of the alpa prana with the mahaprana, which is our breath with the universal breath, the atma with the paramatma, the manas with the mahat. So the joining is one type of, or the male and the female, the hat and the ta, Hatha Yoga. The Shakti with Shiva. So this is one definition of yoga, which is usually from the Navanatha or the Hatha Yoga side. There is Samadhau, Yujya Samadhau. Samadhau means Sama adi. Samadhav. What is sama? Here, this is what we are going to discuss in the next session. Sama means equilibrium, balance. Adhav, adi, as it was before. Before what? Before Purusha penetrated into Prakriti. That is samadhi, samadhav. That is another type of yoga, which is propounded by Patanjali here. So Patanjali is not propounding the joining type of yoga, but he is propounding the samadhav, going back to the original state. That is why we have to understand Sankhya with yoga. Okay? Like I said, it's very mathematical. It is very precise. The methodology is excellent. And it's completely bereft of belief. You don't have to believe anything. You don't have to trust. But in the other types of yoga, you have to trust, you have to surrender, you have to go through the Guru. Patanjali also you need Guru, but it is not as mystical, it is not as hidden. It's like mathematics. If you know the formula, you will get it. Okay? And let us very quickly look at what is Patanjali Yoga Sutra broadly. What has he written? What is so great about this book? The book has only 196 sutras. Okay? It is divided into 4 chapters. The first chapter is called the Samadhi Pada. Pada means leg. Samadhi Pada, which is theory. It will explain the ascent of consciousness. How Purusha has to get entangled from Prakriti. So, if I remember correctly, I think it is 51 sutras. Then, the second chapter is called Sadhana Pada. Sadhana means practice. What are the methodologies? What are the tools? How do I go back to Samadhi? I think 55 sutras. Third chapter is called Vibhuti Pada. This is the most mystical. Vibhuti means powers. So Patanjali says, when you are going to practice these techniques, you will acquire some siddhis and some nidhis. What these siddhis are, nidhis are, I'll tell you. These are powers, special powers. Like to read somebody's mind, to become very small, to become very large. Is this really there? Next session, we will discuss this. And the final chapter is called Kaivalya Pada. Understand the word Kaivalya. Kaivalya means Kevala. Kevalasya Kaivalya. Kevala means just the one. Just the one. What is this one? This one is Purusha. So how do we become back just that one that we were? Kaivalya. So these are the 4 major chapters. I am reminded of a small story. So 4 Natha yogis were meditating in an ashram. One was a very young monk, a very young student. He heard the sound of a flag fluttering in the wind. And he said, Guruji, I can hear the flag is flapping. There was a slightly more advanced Natha yogi. He said, don't be stupid. It is the wind which is flapping, not the flag. Another more senior to the second yogi was sitting there. He said, You're also stupid. It is the mind which is flapping. Because all flapping happens in the mind. Then there was a senior, the most senior yogi sitting there, who was very close to liberation, was very close to Kaivalya. He said, all of you are stupid. It's your mouths which are flapping. Okay? So these 4 chapters are like those 4 monks, like those 4 yogis. The first one is still seeing the world like the flag flapping. The second one has done some sadhana. So he's saying, no, it's not the flag, it's the wind. He's looking at the reason. He's saying, no, it is not Purusha, it is Prakriti who is changing. Vibhuti, when you got powers, you'll say, no, it is actually the mind. Neither the wind nor the flag, the mind. And somebody who was very, very close, Kaivalya, who was reaching liberation, he understands that it is all just a perception. It's the mouth which is flapping. Okay, we will put a stop here. Sunday, 9 o'clock, again we will start. And I will go into the detailed explanation of the Darshana, Yoga Darshana. If you want to know Patanjali Yoga Sutra, we do that once every 6 months or something like that. So you can join our classes where every sutra will be explained.